Welcome to the Journal. Food is our big story this week. We're paying a lot more for it, a lot of people don't have enough of it, and Washington may be about to make a bad situation worse. First, the price of food. Rice alone has shot up by more than half in just 2 weeks, double its price a year ago. But corn, wheat, and other grains are sky high too, creating a crisis for poor people around the world. Here at home, milk prices have soared over the past year by 26%, eggs by 24%, bread by 13%. Add rising grocery prices to the higher cost of gas and electricity, throw in disappearing jobs and home foreclosures, and you can understand why people all over our country are struggling to keep food on the table. The government figures 28 million Americans will be using food stamps this year, the highest level since the program began in the 1960s. So what do you do if you're working every day but don't earn enough to keep up with the rising cost of living? Or you're retired and living on Social Security? Or you've lost your job, your home, get sick, your bank account is bare as your cupboard? Well, you turn to food banks and food pantries, but the worldwide demand for food is squeezing them too, as we learned when we visited some of the food assistance centers here in the New York area. I'll wager that what we heard can be heard where you live too. So let's talk now with someone who can help us understand what's going on. You met David Beckman last week when our subject was world hunger. An economist and minister, he spent 15 years at the World Bank overseeing projects to end poverty. For the last 15 years, he's been president of Bread for the World, a Washington-based coalition that advocates changing farm policies for the purpose of eliminating hunger. Welcome, David, back to the Journal.
Well, thank you. So far, the House wasn't willing to cut a nickel from subsidies to landholders, big landowners. And in the Senate, they want to increase payments to wealthy, affluent landholders. And the choice couldn't be clearer, because the food stamp program is and government assistance to food banks is in the Farm Bill. You know, so we have 25 million of the poorest people in America on food stamps. And we now know, because it's all computerized, that 90% of the benefits are gone by the third week of the month. And the fastest, most direct way to reduce hunger in America would be to make it possible for those people to eat for the whole month. And so far, Congress has not been willing to cut a nickel from the payments to landholders in order to strengthen the food stamp program or do things for rural Americans who are really struggling. It's not just the food stamp program. The rate of poverty and hunger is higher in rural America than in urban America. So there are ways in the Farm Bill that they can help rural people who are really small farmers and other rural people who are struggling, but shifting money from the commodity payments to the landowners into those programs that help the whole rural community. So far, Congress has not been willing to budge.
So what would a good bill look like to you and your coalition?
Let's just start to move in the right direction. Start to shave some of the payments to wealthy people. For example, there was an amendment in the Senate to cut payments to a farmer to no more than $250,000 per farmer. You know, cut payments, you can't get a payment if you make $1 million a year. You know, those are fairly reasonable proposals. And if we just start to turn that direction, it would free up substantial money to strengthen the food stamp program, strengthen our food banking system, strengthen assistance to rural America, and get out of the way of farmers in poor countries who are trying to make a living and don't have subsidies.
How so?
Because poor farmers in Africa and other parts of the developing world don't get these big subsidies. They're competing against cotton that's farmed in Arkansas and Texas and Georgia on big spreads with big subsidies from the federal government. So our cotton with taxpayer dollars goes all over the world, and those poor guys in Africa are trying to compete against that. And it's crop after crop.
But people are saying now, well, this is a good bill because the boom could go bust down the road. So we better build these subsidies in because farmers are always subjected to the vagaries of weather. And
you know, farming is a risky business. So it is appropriate to have a federally funded revenue insurance program to help farmers, especially small farmers, deal with the risk of agriculture.
So that we get the food we eat.
Right. That is an appropriate form of assistance. But the Farm Bill is riddled with subsidies that make no economic sense, that are not providing help to the people who really need help. You know, right now, food prices are up. The food banks don't have enough. The food stamp program is a good program. It's right there. The federal funding for the food banks is down. So, you know, they could put a little bit more money there. That's the fastest, most direct way to reduce hunger in America. In fact, if we would do enough to just, I think if we would make it possible for food stamp families who are already on food stamps to eat for the whole month, just doing that would be enough to cut hunger in half within a year in this country.
Why are so many people on food stamps now?
Well, in this decade, we've seen an increase in poverty. So that has driven up the participation in the food stamp program. So we need a stronger food stamp program so the kids get to eat, but we also need a broader array of policies that make it easier for people to earn a living. That's a bigger topic. But we need to reverse the gradual increase of poverty that's going on. That's what's really driving the food stamp participation.
I was a very independent woman. You couldn't get me to come stand in line to get no food free from nobody because I was always used to working and taking care of myself.
When you think of food pantries, you think of the homeless, you think of shelters, you think of substance abuse, you think of just outright people who are down and out. But now the faces have changed. We are short on fresh vegetable. You have onions.
Reverend Melanie Samuels directs the Bed-Stuy campaign against hunger.
You want some canned vegetables?
Yeah.
Now, we are seeing more families, mothers with children, working families coming in. We're seeing people that have graduated from high school, people who are making a fairly good income, but they have told us over and over again that the cost of food is unbelievable. Cost of living, finding housing, that has pushed them into food pantries, and they don't only come to this food pantry, but they go to several food pantries trying to see if they can accumulate enough food for a week.
She can't provide as much food as she once did. Food donations to her pantry have dropped by half, even as the number of people needing food has increased 70% in 1 year.
We just simply do not have enough food to go around.
Tamar Albert heads the Hanson Place campaign against hunger in Brooklyn.
So the amount that we're offering to each client has decreased. The quality of food has decreased. We're offering more carbohydrates, less protein. If you look at it right now, you'll notice that everything is canned, which means that everything is high in sodium. We don't have a lot of fresh vegetables coming through. We have a complete absence of dairy products, which means that we have cereal, but we don't have any milk to put on the cereal. We have had occasions where we're turning people away, which means that they're not even able to get the decreased basket, that they're actually going home with absolutely nothing.
The city's food pantries and soup kitchens rely on the food bank for New York City to supply much of the food they give out. But now, this resource is drying up.
We used to have a lot of vegetables, a lot of protein, a lot of beans, pasta. Those items have basically disappeared.
Tyrone Harrising is the food bank's chief operating officer.
I have never seen this in all the time that I've been here. This year is essentially the worst in terms of the food shortage that we have seen. There used to be aisles and aisles of food.
Like many American jobs, food is also heading overseas. Much of what was once donated to food banks is now sold to consumers abroad.
It's it's a trend that we hope is not going to continue, but we don't know where this is going to take us.
As so many people like Roosevelt Walker face empty fridges and bare pantries, American farmers are going all out to meet the worldwide demand for food and earning record prices for their efforts, as they should. Farm income almost doubled last year and is now reaching an all-time high. With grain prices skyrocketing and the federal deficit out of sight, this would seem the moment to cut back on those tens of billions of dollars that taxpayers shower on milk producers, cotton and rice farmers, and growers of corn, soybeans, wheat, and sugar. Subsidies that keep coming whether they're needed or not. The present Farm Bill expires next Friday with all those subsidies in it. The White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives are trying to resolve their differences over a new bill to replace it. Every one of you will be affected by what happens in the next few days.